Hello and welcome to Daily Work Remote Strategies. Today's session is with Doug Turner, and we're going to be talking about the power of hope. Hello, Doug, and turning it over to you.
Hello, Sanya. Thanks. It's good to be here today. Beautiful day where I am. I hope it's a beautiful day where everyone else is. It's always good to see the sunshine. So I chose to talk about the power of hope today because it's something that has always drawn my attention. When I was studying positive psychology years ago at the University of Pennsylvania, this concept of hope grabbed my attention, and I've never been able to quite let it go. And I thought it was particularly applicable today in this time of just change. And one of the reasons people feel hopeless is that they feel blocked to achieve the goals that they have, or to do what they want to do, and all. And I thought, wow, what a definition of our times today. I mean, in some places you can't even go out of your house. You know, you're blocked at every turn. You can't get on an airplane. You can't take that trip to Europe you were planning to do. You can't go to your prom, for heaven's sakes. And so things have been blocked, and that can create, that feeling of blockage can create this sense of hopelessness. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about the work of Rick Snyder, who was a professor at the University of Kansas. And he spent most of his academic career studying this concept of hope and what it means and how do we develop it and how do we even define it? What are the components and factors of it? I had the great opportunity to speak with Rick a few months before he passed away several years ago. And what a, I don't know how to describe, what a centered guy, you know. I mean, he was just so together, you know. It was just it was calming and hopeful to even just to speak with him. So what I want to share with you today are some of his work around this concept of hope. And what I've thought about this is that it creates a mechanism for us to respond to the blockages and things that we have going on today in a real tangible way. So in his work, what he said, that the degree to which you experience hope really depends on two main factors. He called them pathway thinking and agency thinking towards a goal. Now, what that means, translated, is can you see a path from where you are to where you want to be? And if you can, then the likelihood of your hope will increase. If you can't see a pathway from here to there, then you can deteriorate into a more hopeless state. So that's part of it. The other part, this agency thinking, is kind of inside your head. Even if you see a pathway, do you think you can walk along that pathway? Do you have the energy? Do you have the will to do that? Many times you've heard the old saying that says, where there's a will, there's a way, which speaks of pathway and agency thinking. Will is the agency, pathway is the way. But I think we could turn that upside down and say, where there's a way, there's a will. And if you can identify a pathway or a way toward your goal, even if it's blocked, and you may have to change that pathway, then you can start to enhance your willpower to do that. Some people call it willpower versus way power as you try to achieve that goal. So those two things are critical in terms of doing that. So when I work with clients, either in my executive coaching work or with the outplacement work that I do with the career counseling with folks, I try to listen to see where they might be on these two factors. Are they totally stumped? Do they have no way of moving forward? Or are they just worn out and they don't have that will to go on? Let me give you a quick little example. I work with people who have been laid off from their jobs, and I help them kind of get back on track. And some of these folks have not had to do a resume, for example, for decades, you know, and so they are totally stumped. They want to do it. They just don't know. They don't have the first clue where to start, you know, with all of these things. So they have that will, but they don't have the way. They don't have the pathway. And so what I do is just show them a bit of a pathway, and I can almost see in their eyes or hear in their voice their degree of hope for achieving their goal, which is to be employed again. increase as they see a pathway open up before them. And so in today's world, with all this virus stuff floating around, you know, we may have had a will and a nice way, a pathway towards a particular goal, like going to surf on the beach or whatever it is. And all of a sudden the world changed and our pathway that we had established is stopped, is blocked in some way. And so at that point, we have some choices to make. We can try to find another pathway towards the goal that we had, or we can adjust the goal a little bit, maybe defer it for a little bit. But we can, if we think about these components, we have a method that we can use to kind of assess the situation we're in and take some steps to work around it. Okay, so in these two areas, this will and way part of to establish and increase our hope for the future and for us achieving our goals, there are certain things that Dr. Snyder has identified that will help increase or enhance these areas. Let's talk about will for a minute. This is just your kind of willpower, your interest, your energy towards moving forward towards something. And he said one of the best ways to do it is to set a goal, but not a goal that other people want you to have, but one that really is yours and that you own. And there's a lot of research and a lot of work around what makes a good goal and what makes it something that will motivate you and increase this willpower that you have. But just the fact of setting a goal is an important factor of increasing your willpower. Another one he talked about was recalling earlier successes. This gives you the sense that you have done things before and succeeded. You have achieved before, and this can create this increased will or energy that you can do it again in that. And that's something that I work a lot with the outplacement work that I do, because, you know, people feel like getting laid off in some ways is, they interpret it as sort of a failure, but they've had all this success prior to that. And so we try to refocus on that to say, you've done it there. In fact, we craft their resumes around that success so that they can demonstrate that they can keep doing this. Just the way you think about things also has a huge impact. You know, it sounds maybe a little bit simplistic and trite, but just telling yourself, I can do this, sort of a mantra kind of an idea, changes that thinking of I can't do this, you know, the little engine that could kind of an approach. I think the next one that I mentioned, or that I'm going to mention here, is really important, and that is laugh at yourself and laugh at the situation. I mean, it's because it's all a process, you know, it's all something that we're moving through and that you move through individually. But, you know, if you can't, I don't know, get your surfboard out and go surfing on the beaches in California right now, then I saw something on YouTube the other day that was hilarious. This dad put a surfboard on a wagon and then fixed a sprinkler to shoot water over the surfboard, and his daughter got on the surfboard, and then he pulled the wagon through the water, and that was their way of surfing through that. And I thought that was great. You know, I mean, they achieved the goal of surfing, I guess, but they changed the pathway to get there, and they created that fun experience for all of that. Another one that I like to do is when I'm faced with a block of a pathway or a goal, I try to think of it more in terms of an opportunity or a challenge. And if we think of this virus time we're in, what are the opportunities that this presents? I mean, my wife and I have been home in our house for the last several weeks, and we've decided, okay, if this is where we are, what opportunity can we leverage to do this? And we've been going through old files, looking at old family records and old pictures and organizing all of those things. So while one pathway was blocked, we changed our energy to another that was helpful to do that. And then finally, just enjoy the journey along the way. You know, it's a step at a time, and things change and the world changes, and we go through that. But as we look at these kinds of strategies, seemingly easy and simple kinds of things, we can increase our energy towards moving towards that. But remember, energy and will without a way cannot create this hopefulness that we're seeking. And so the way power is another area that we need to focus on and to look at that. And some of the things that Dr. Snyder recommended was one way was to study what he called overcomers, people who overcome blockages. And what do they do? And how do they think? And I like to think of one of my daughters as an overcomer. She's faced some pretty significant challenges in her life, but she gets down for like 10 minutes and then she's off on another thing, you know, trying to find a way around that. And I'm impressed with that. And I'm impressed with people who can do that. Some of the folks I work with that have been laid off are like that. You know, they get laid off and they say, okay, given that, now what? You know, we've got it. Now what do we do? And then another way to enhance this way area, this way power, is to brainstorm multiple ways that we can get to a goal, and then clarify the pluses and minuses of each one. If we set one pathway from where we are to where we want to be without any contingency plans, then we're setting ourselves up to face some hopelessness, I think, because things change. And I'll give you some examples of that I've seen in the news and stuff in just a minute, of things that I think are perfect examples of looking for alternative ways or being prepared for those things. And then one of the most important things is, once you establish a pathway, or you then do it, then start, take a step, get started. And that sometimes is the most difficult part of all. It's just get moving and get some momentum moving. I like the analogy of a car. If you're trying to steer a car, you can't really steer it. It can't really turn unless it's moving in some way. And once the car's moving, then you can adjust the direction as you go. But if you don't start, if you don't push on the gas a little bit, then you can't steer it and get it going in the direction that you want. And then finally, build support around you. You know, let people know what your goal is and what pathway you're trying to seek to do that, and to move forward. So since I mentioned my daughter, let me give you a quick example. She had a goal to run a half marathon, and she was doing it in honor of a friend of hers for a challenge that they were facing. Well, with the virus, they canceled the half marathon. She'd been training for months to do this. And so she decided, okay, so that pathway was blocked that she had. And she really had a lot of willpower to do this. She really wanted to do this. But that pathway was blocked. So she decided on the day that the half marathon was supposed to have been run, she would run it anyway. And so she got up, and at the time, she charted out her own course. She ran it all by herself. And then when she finished it, she accomplished the goal. It was a different path than she thought she was going to take, literally, you know, and when she got home, she took the top of a yogurt cup and made a medal out of it and hung it on herself, that she came in first in her division, but she also came in second, third, and fourth, and last in her division because she did that. But that was her alternate pathway to achieve the goal that she had. I loved it. I thought it was great. And that concept we can all apply to the things that if one way is blocked, we can start with another way. So the way I sum this up is a little thing I coined years ago in working with people. And it goes like this in helping to develop this way power and willpower. And what I tell people is, get real and stay in the game. Get real and stay in the game. Get real means take a hard look at the circumstance, at the blocks that you have and the things that have changed, like what the situation we're in now. But then stay in the game and do something to enhance your willpower and to enhance your way power, to find alternatives to keep moving towards your goals. And I like that. To me, that speaks a lot. Same thing in a financial world. If you're drowning in debt, get real and stay in the game. Look frankly at your spreadsheet and make some enhancing efforts to your energy and your way power, your pathways to get to your goal of getting out of debt, for example. Okay. So I want to give you a few quick examples. Here's a good example. I'm going to show you this picture. Can you see that okay? We got a wedding announcement yesterday from some friends of ours. And this is the picture that they inserted in their wedding announcement. And this is what they wrote on the back. It says, "The happy couple, along with their families, look forward to celebrating their marriage once normalcy returns. Receptions will be scheduled in Arkansas and in Utah for family and friends to safely gather together and celebrate, laugh, and hug the newlyweds. A detailed invitation will follow." And I thought that was great. Their pathway to their big wedding celebration was blocked by the circumstances we're in. So they just incorporated that into their planning and put this picture out with this description. And we're all looking forward to the detail to follow, to see where that was. You've seen probably on YouTube and other places the alternate plans that high schools have made for graduation ceremonies. Some of them just choke me up when I see the graduates standing out in front of their house and lines of cars driving by, honking and waving and celebrating and all of the things. I thought, what a great way to maintain your hope, for the future. Even though the traditional commencement isn't possible or hasn't been possible, they found another pathway to achieve that goal and to celebrate that goal in a different kind of way. See the same thing with the proms and the other kinds of things, even online classes, all of a sudden school stopped. And so that traditional pathway to go to class and learn and be together had to change. And so overnight, seemingly, this online approach took its place and people were able to continue on. But to conclude this little thought about keeping our hope alive and using and leveraging the power of hope, my favorite example, and I hope I can share this without choking up a little bit here, but there's an elderly man whose wife was in a assisted living on the 3rd floor, and they prohibited visiting. So he couldn't go visit his wife, who was suffering from some form of dementia, maybe Alzheimer's. And it was just killing him. And so his pathway to do that was blocked. So what did he do? He brainstormed and he found a cherry picker bucket thing from the fire department, I think it was. So he gets in this thing and they raise him up 3 floors to the window of where his wife is so he can wave to her and be with her in that way. I thought, perfect example. Rather than sit home and lose hope about being with his beloved wife over probably 50 or more years of their marriage, he created a new pathway, used his energy, this willpower, to make that accomplished, and he was able to achieve his goal. So that's I love those stories, and you can just feel in the stories the power of hope. And now that we understand what the components of hope are, I really hope that we can all incorporate those into this time we have so that we can push through the things that are blocking us from achieving our goals and keep moving forward. Great.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you. Yeah, that was an incredible visual, wasn't it? When I saw that in the news of that large fire department. Cherry picker.
That was really made me quite emotional. I thought, wow, that is great.
It's amazing. It's exactly what you're talking about. The way of walking in through the front door, signing in, and going up to his wife wasn't available to him. So what does he do?
The literal pathway was blocked. And don't ever forget this picture. That's great.
Seriously. They're planning their wedding in COVID times, and they're ready.
That worked today. That's today. So
and even the message on the back was really hopeful, and we're looking forward to a time where people in attendance can give the happy couple hugs.
Yeah, and to me, this is a good example too of getting real and staying in the game. This is the reality of our time, but stay in the game and keep moving. So
I want to say to our attendees that is something that I associate with Doug. A year or a couple of years ago, we made this deck of cards about questions that you can ask yourself if you were getting coached. What if it were easy cards? And I just opened one up. I hit over to the side. I opened them up. There are a bunch of cards in different colors, and maybe 1 or 2 of you on the call have them. So card number 6 is Doug Turner's card. So it always says the name of the author. And as you see, it is, where do you need to get real and stay in the game?
Perfect.
I associate that thinking with you.
Works for me, so we'll see. So,
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you.
great. Thanks. Have a
We're
good
ready for your questions. So we are ready for your questions on anything about hope, about the will, the way, any of that that you like, anything specific to your situation, whether it's at work or outside of work. Go ahead, lay it on us, lay it on Doug and me. What are the questions you have right now? And at the same time that we ask that, we usually also ask, what is one thing you're taking away from this today? Is it something about the will? Is it something about the way? What is something you're going to do differently, or something that this reminded of you of that you will do again?
Perfect.
So as we see what our folks on the line are going to do differently, I'm going to ask you a question about the will and the way. That's actually not really the phrasing of Rick Snyder. How did it come to you that that's how you want to think about it and how you want to teach that?
I came across it in some of the reading that I do from other authors. They kind of summarized it that way. I can't say I coined that, but I liked it. I thought it was something that we all can relate to. We've heard often. And I like the switching it. Where there's a way, there's a will. They both work together to create this hopefulness that we're looking for.
And what is it about hope or hope theory? Why do you love it so much?
I think it correlates a lot with our thinking about optimism and pessimism versus pessimism. And it just, when I took it apart, the way Dr. Snyder took it apart and created it, it helped me understand it a little bit more and be able to use it. It was more accessible that way. That hope is something that you can develop, and that you just don't either have it or you don't have it. There's things you can do to develop hope and help others to develop hope in their future. So it really struck me as a useful tool, both individually for myself, but also for my family, and now for the people that I'm coaching and working with.
Yeah, I can see, because it's not just a tool that's useful, but you can work on it.
Yeah.
There are steps you can take that resonates with me a lot. Okay, we have some comments about what people are going to do, and we have a question for you. Some comments are stay in the game. So what they're taking away is the stay in the game, because this person is saying, I often become frightened with big challenges, and so I'm going to turn my fear into grit to continue to offer service.
Yeah. Think of it as an opportunity, those challenges.
Yeah. And a question we have for you is, there will be big financial setbacks because of the current situation over the next couple of years. Also, things will not be good for a long time to recover from that. How can we deal with that? Most people will be in this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Right off the top of my head, that get real and stay in the game. That's part of getting real. Is looking at it with an unvarnished view of what the reality is now, and it may mean that we need to adjust or amend our goals a little bit for right now, or recalculate them literally with the financial part of it, and decide what it is that we need to alter and to keep the will energy and the pathway or the way energy going, so that it's achievable. So for example, in the financial world, if you were thinking of retiring at 55 with X number of dollars, or 60 with X number of dollars, given the circumstance, it might be a time to rethink, to get real about that, and to rethink that, so that the goal isn't so far out of reach that it creates this hopelessness, that there's no pathway to get there with all of that. I might mention my financial people always promised me that I'd have enough money until I die. What they didn't say was, now I have to die about 10 years sooner. Anyway, so that's what came off the top of my head, is that part of that is the get real part. Look at the reality around us and adjust things accordingly to maintain your hope.
Both on the financial front, and also on what's possible, just your scope of what's possible, work-wise, home-wise. It sounds like, hey, that way is not available. What are other ways, even if they're smaller or thinner or a different color?
Yeah, I found working with folks that people who hang on to unreal goals, for example, that have become unrealistic, they take a major hit to their hope and their well-being and their ability to see a way forward with all of that stuff. So I think it's a very dynamic thing to keep all of that in line.
Well, Doug, could you walk someone through if they're sitting at home and they know that they have to recalibrate their financial situation, their work situation, maybe a little bit of their home situation in terms of who's at home, what, and let's say they're alone and they don't quite know who else they can talk with about this, about a friend in terms of this hope. What questions should they ask themselves? Let's say they want to do this exercise tonight after listening today, to walk themselves through, get real and stay in the game, to get that realistic set of expectations.
So I think it starts with a good goal, really. And that's about, what do you want or what do you need? And being honest about that, and maybe separating wants from needs, because they're different. I mean, sometimes we confuse them a little bit. And then I think the next step is to start thinking about, okay, here's where I am, and that's where I want to be now with the goal, and start gathering data about multiple things you can do to move forward toward that end state, that where do I want to be part. And that may include getting data from other people, talking to your financial folks, if it's a financial related thing, talking to your friends and neighbors and families, and getting, if you're looking to start a new business or you need to adjust your business, maybe there's some people in similar circumstances that you can get together and brainstorm some steps along the way. And I guess that's a good point. When I talk about pathways, it's not a super highway from New York to California, one way, 80 miles an hour the whole way. It's a step, it's a movement, along the way. And then you set and adjust as you move along the way. So I guess that's kind of a process that I think of and I work with folks is, okay, where do you want to be? Well, it's 3 questions. Where are you? That's the get real. Where do you want to be? And then it's, how do you want to get there? How do you get there? And that's about getting the data that you need to move there.
And then the stay in the game seems to refer to the actual action steps, the small steps. Is that what you mean? Or do you mean something different?
Stay in the game has a couple of meanings to me. It's the steps along the way, but it's also being prepared for a block. Because you may define a pathway, but the world's going to change again, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And be prepared to stay in it and to keep looking for pathways around all of those things. And by the way, I didn't mention, but one of the things that Dr. Snyder says is, as you achieve these little goals along the way, it creates an upward spiral loop of a positive emotion that feeds your will and feeds your ability and creativity in opening new pathways to new goals as you move along. And I love that. I love that self-sustaining kind of aspect of it.
I think that's a beautiful thing to end on. May you keep fulfilling that loop and keep giving yourself little steps, even today, whatever it is. If it's a 10-minute walk or looking at your finances for 10 minutes, whatever it is.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone. Stay in the game.
Stay in the game. We'll see you again at 11 a.m. tomorrow. All the best. Be well. Thank you, Doug.